I would love to debate you. Excuse me. Yeah, Ignostic One. Pick your message board. Because if you want to debate in voice, I've had my experiences debating in voice. 90 to 95% of what you actually think is true, and you actually believe it. You actually believe what you're going to state to me is true, is actually false, and I can prove that it's false via the scientific information. This is why I don't really like verbal debates. I've actually witnessed debates on YouTube and different videos in which both sides, the theistic and atheistic or evolutionist via procreation, whatever the debate was, both sides stated things that I knew were false, and I knew that their opponent did not realize that it was false. Okay, they didn't have the information. If Ignostic One, pick your message board. If I'm on Theology Web, I'm on Carm's website. Pick your message board. Let's do it. I know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, for us to debate here in the room is pointless because you're going to spout out things that are patently false, and I know that they're false.
If you don't want to debate in this room, then I suggest you go elsewhere. Rev, you're up.
Yeah, I put in text, Agnostic. He's not going to debate you, but he's lying on top of that. He's like, LOL at Rev, the man you refused my debates. But I have the recording of the debate, IDScience. You forgot, haven't you? Right? You're not worth debating on a message board, IDScience, because you don't know half the shit that you're talking about. Right? And I have the recording where I asked you, about this. I don't know anything about that. Well, how about this? Oh, I don't know anything about that. This isn't your forte, IDScience. Right? So stop posturing. Right? You're not here to debate. Right? So stop lying that I refused your debate. Because IDScience, right, now that I have the recording, I'll post it up on YouTube, right, and I'll post links on the CARM website and on Theology Web, right, so how everyone can know just how ignorant you are on the topic. So stop posturing. You're done for. Stick a fork in you, you're done. But if you have debated, if this is your forte, IDScience, go right ahead and post the links to your debates on message boards. Go ahead. Post the links. I'm sure you have them. I'm sure you use them to impress your friends all the time. Go ahead. Post the links to the threads, IDScience. Right? I don't expect you to do it now. So you've got a couple of minutes before you take the mic. So if you'd be so kind, right, stop bragging about it being your forte. Just post the links. Just the facts, man. Double-edge your mic. It's not going to happen. He doesn't have any links. It's not his forte.
No audio. Go ahead, dog.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, to IDScience, I've got my big boy pants on currently. I'm wearing them. I always wear them. So I'm not worried about whether or not I can handle a debate or not. If I fail, then I fail. If I'm wrong, then I've learned something. And I'm perfectly comfortable with that. So I'm well aware of the basics of biology. I gave you some of my basic credentials. If you press me hard enough, I'll go ahead and download my transcript from my university. I'll blot out all the pertinent information nobody needs to know about. And I'll upload it to some picture share just to demonstrate that, yeah, I have taken these classes. I'll show you my grades in them. I maintain, actually I don't maintain, I'm going up, but I got about a 3.78 GPA right now. So, I'm ready. I don't need to go to a chat forum and post things in text. I prefer on audio. Okay, I prefer it because if I can hear you represent the argument and not go, what's that say? Dog ran up the street with Timmy, and no, I don't need to hear people read, and if I hear you reading, then I'll know you don't really have the basic understanding of what you're trying to convey, and I assume that's why you want to go to a message board, so that you can copy and paste pre-scripted arguments that you find on some web page. But I'm not doing that. I don't even want to do that. I'm not even going to use any of the information that is in my textbooks or in my notes or anything. I'll just go from my head, as I always do when debating biology with people of your ilk. I've got no problem. So I'm telling you right now, you said name the message board. That would be Paltalk in the Christianity section under religion and spirituality, in the chat room believers versus non-believers. That's the chat forum that I pick. You said pick, I picked. You want to know when? Right now. It's 7:40 p.m. my time. I'm ready to go. I need no preparations or anything. I'm good to go right now. That's what happens when you study. Okay, so I don't know why you're coming out with all these excuses and worried about my fifis getting hurt or something like that, or being wrong or anything. I don't care. Those are your excuses. That's what you are apparently afraid of, because that's what you are talking about. Now, I've already stated multiple times in texts, I'm ready. Right now. I've even shut down the game. Well, actually, it's in background, but I will shut down the game that I'm playing right now, and we can do this. So, you haven't stated what topic, but I'll pick the topic, I guess, unless you have a problem with that, and that would be evolution is the best explanation for the diversity of life. What say you on that topic? Free mic.
Okay, Ignostic One. But see, what I fear here is that you're not going to, it's not that you're not going to understand, you're not going to actually be familiar with the information I'm going to give to you. And you're going to say, well, no, IDScience, what you said is wrong. And it's a very boring debate, because when you say IDScience, what you said is wrong, it's going to take me a while to actually go get the information, and then you in return have to go and read the information I give you. You can't just, I debated Revelation False in a room, and he actually said, IDScience, you're wrong. And, when I gave him the papers, he didn't want to go read the papers. He just wanted to go out on a limb and say your information is wrong. So this is why I don't actually like verbal debates. This is entertainment for me. This is not really a debate. Okay, I mean, scientists don't debate.
Look at the screen. Nobody else is going to put their hand up, ID. You said you would debate English. Okay, put your hand back up, in. Now, I'll take you to that off, ID. Get up there and start your debate. You've done shit since you got here.
Okay, Ignostic One. I'm going to start by asking you, what falsifies evolution? Okay, and specifically Darwinian evolution. Okay, there's actually one thing that will falsify the theory. Do you know what that one thing is? Can you answer that question? Let's start right there. What is it that can falsify the theory of Darwinian evolution?
What would falsify, well, by Darwinian evolution, do you mean descent with modification? Do you mean natural selection? What would falsify descent with modification? Is that what you're asking? Yeah, that's pretty fucking easy. That would be two parents, male and female, having sex, having a baby, and that baby genetically identical. I got cut off there. Did you hear what I was saying? I didn't get to finish saying what I was saying, and you already said I was wrong. So are you paying attention? What did you get? How far did I get? Right. So I was clarifying what you mean, and I asked, are you referring to descent with modification or are you referring to natural selection? These are the main two ideas that Darwin put forward. So is that what you're referring to? Yes, no. Yes, no, yes, okay. Now, descent with modification, what descent with modification means is that the offspring is genetically the same as the parents, but slightly different. Descent, meaning the offsprings have been modified. Do you accept that? That that's what descent with modification means? Now, for the other part, natural selection. Do you accept that what natural selection states is that nature uses the features that have been modified and selects based on those modifications? Is that a fair rep? Okay. What would falsify descent with modification would be two parents having a baby that is genetically identical. Now, this is a strange proposition because in like, say, mammals, human beings, for example, we don't have a genetically identical progeny, or we don't have genetically identical parents, right? We don't do that. When we mate, 50% of half of our genetic code goes into, what do you mean false? If I make a baby, half of my genetic information is going to go into making that baby. Do you agree with that? Half of my genetic information. Right. Do you agree that the other half comes from the mother? These are basic questions. I'm only getting them out of the way for clarity. Right. This Lila person's trying to knock me off the microphone here. When two humans reproduce, let's say they make one offspring, that offspring has 100% of a genetic structure from both parents. Now, what would falsify descent with modification would be the offspring being identical to the parent generation. Now, considering that a husband and a wife, or a male and a female, when they reproduce, they're not genetically the same. You would have to have two twins, male and female, identical twins, giving birth to a baby, and that baby being identical. So descent with modification can be falsified if you were to give an example of an offspring being genetically identical to the parent generation. That would falsify it. But we don't see that. We observe that they're not identical. They have been modified. That's why Darwin noted it, descent with modification. Now, what would falsify natural selection is if nature could not select for a particular phenotype, for a particular variation among the population. If nature, basically what I just said. So an example would be oxygen levels. As we see with the extinction of the dinosaurs, oxygen levels went down, thus the environment was changing. The offspring, or the populations of organisms that were present either could adapt to the changing environment or they could not. So what would falsify would be the environment changing and it not selecting for survivors and and ones that went extinct or ones that died off, meaning the environment changing having no consequence on the population. That's what would falsify evolution or natural selection. Do you agree with that? I pretty much represented both descent with modification and natural selection. Free Mike?
Okay, well, those are actually two different topics: natural selection and Darwinian evolution. Okay, natural selection does not produce new body plans. Okay, and this is the reason I prefer to debate in text, because I can show this. I can actually show you the quotes from evolutionary science that natural selection will not grow wings. It does not happen. Natural selection actually removes the less fit. And we know this. We know, a recent. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Altenberg 16 meeting. There's a recent meeting, I think of like 12 to 15 evolutionary scientists, in which it was called the Altenberg, 16 Altenberg 16 meeting, in which they knew that the mechanisms, of random mutations and selection is not valid. We know this, okay? Do you understand that the mechanisms, Darwinian evolution, the mechanisms of Darwinian evolution have been rejected by evolutionary science? Okay, random mutations is not a mechanism. It's not an acceptable mechanism. Number one. And if you don't know this, I can actually give you the pertinent information. The second thing is, do you understand what phenotypic plasticity is? I'm going to post it here. I'm not sure. That's probably not the correct spelling. I think I left out an E on phenotypic. But do you understand what phenotypic plasticity is? Okay. The DNA sequences do not evolve, Ignostic One. I can inundate you with the information if you want it. Okay. The sequences, the vast majority of DNA sequences do not evolve. They're called the conserved elements. This is the reason why we have living fossils from every single layer, every single strata layer that has fossils in it has some of those same species alive today. You know, we have the horseshoe crab, you know, from Cambrian. We have about I think 400 to 500 species at least from the Cambrian era that are still alive today. They have not evolved their protein coding sequences. They're actually called the conserved elements or the ultra-conserved elements. And this is the reason why Gould had to invent PE, or punctuated equilibrium, is because the fossil record does not show this gradual evolution. Okay? It does not exist in the fossil record. It does not exist in genetics. The sequences, the evolution that you're referring to is called phenotypic plasticity, in which we can have the identical sequences, and we can have a different phenotype. We can actually have a variation in phenotype, but there's no genetic evolution actually taking place. So I'm going to ask you if you're familiar with this. Go ahead.
Right. This is a formal debate. We're presenting arguments for the audience, IDScience. I presented an argument and you've completely ignored it. So, out of courtesy, what I'm going to do is free the mic, and I would like you to take the microphone and address something that I said. You didn't answer anything that I said. You didn't respond to any. I never said anything about phenotypic plasticity. You picked a topic. I gave you a topic. You didn't like the topic, so you changed the topic to Darwinian evolution. Do you remember doing this? Picking Darwinian evolution and what would falsify Darwinian? Right. I said, well, what do you mean specifically by Darwinian evolution? For clarity, I gave two main propositions found in Darwinian evolution, and that is descent with modification or differential reproductive success. That's another way to understand it. And I gave natural selection. You've agreed to both of those propositions. I gave you examples of what would falsify it. You didn't say anything about that. So out of courtesy, I'm going to free up the microphone, let you state what you say about what I said, and we'll go from there. But I don't expect to keep going back and forth with you, going with these off-topic things. So we've picked a topic. I've given an argument. Thus, the topic is set in stone right now. There's no changing the topic. Any desire on your part to change the topic is moving the goalpost. And the next time you do this, I'm just going to assume that you're done with the debate, right? And I will bow out of the conversation and leave it to the audience to decide which argument they favor. That's what we're in right now. We're in a formal setting, okay? So here's the microphone. Please address what I said. I gave you the courtesy of repeating it. Free mic.
My first question to you would be the evidence that you're giving for evolution, these minor variations in allied frequencies. Will this actually prove Darwinian evolution? The evidence that you're giving for evolution, or the evidence that you gave, does this actually prove species can grow new appendages? For example, the evidence that you're going to give me, can this prove that wings can grow, or fins can turn into legs or arms. The evidence that you're going to give to me, can this prove this? Yes or no?
Yeah. So I warned you. I told you I wasn't going to go back and forth like this. I warned you that if you went off topic and you moved the goalpost again, that I was just going to assume that you're done with the debate, that you've stated your point, which was incoherent, off-topic rambling, and I was just going to bow out. I never said anything about minor variations in species as any main premise. I never stated anything about fins. You're just asking me, like, no, I talked about descent with modification, differential reproductive success. I talked about that. I didn't say anything about minor variations giving rise to new species. I didn't say that. It had nothing to do technically with what I said. You're just talking about things you want to talk about while ignoring what I'm saying. So there's literally no point for me to continue. I told you what would falsify evolution. That's the topic you picked. I gave you examples of Darwinian evolution. I gave you examples of what would falsify Darwinian evolution. You haven't told me or anybody else in this room whether or not you accept what I said, that would in fact falsify it. You've only agreed to clarifications. So I guess we're done, IDScience. I guess it's up to the audience. Who does the audience favor in support for IDScience's question about what would falsify evolution? Me or him? Free mic.
Okay, 10-minute debate, we're done. Ignostic One, the evidence that you gave, the examples that you gave, I'm asking you specifically, how much evolution do we observe? Okay, the evidence that you gave for evolution, because I'm assuming that you're actually using observable instances. You're not actually using, Gould's PE, in which you believe that we have this rapid change in body plans without any evidence, without any observable evidence. So, Ignostic One, you have your examples. I'm assuming have observations that we can observe, right? So the examples that you're giving, do we have any examples of wings growing, of body plans changing? Because this is Darwinian evolution. Darwinian evolution stands or falls on body plans changing. Okay, if you don't have evidence of body plans actually changing, and specifically protein coding sequences changing, because this is integral to the theory. Okay, you have to have evidence that the protein coding sequences are capable of evolving. If you don't have evidence of this, you don't have any evidence of the theory, right? The evidence that you gave for evolution, I will guarantee you, I will 100% guarantee you, no sequence changes, no DNA sequence changes are taking place. 0 DNA sequences are taking place. When you have a mother and a father, with their offspring, okay, and their offspring is slightly different, I will absolutely guarantee you that no DNA sequence changes, no DNA sequence evolution is actually taking place in this. Their DNA sequences are identical, and I can actually prove this because we know that every human being that is alive today, our DNA is 99.9% identical. It's virtually identical. And so the evolution that is actually taking place is not DNA based. The protein coding sequences have not changed between the parent and the child. Do you understand this?
Were you finished? I'm just going to say that the floor should be open now. There's no reason why to keep it, one. The debate has been finished. It's over. I don't know if you've been looking at text, but the audience has spoken. You can scroll through the comments. You can see what the audience that is listening has said. I think the audience is basically saying that I adequately represented Darwinian evolution after specifying that we're specifically talking about descent with modification and natural selection. Now, you want to talk about body plans changing and stuff like that? Never said it. Never mentioned, I never said the words body plan changing. I haven't talked about feathers and wings. I haven't talked about fins. You're just going off of other things that you might have heard other people say, which have nothing to do with the current conversation the previous conversation that we had and is at a close, right? So the debate didn't take long, right? Because you refused to stay on topic, and I said if you do it again, I was going to end it for us, and it's over. So, yeah, I mean, the floor is open, people. Free mic.
That's actually your best move, Ignostic One. Your best move is to back out of the debate. I'm going to tell you what falsifies evolution. What falsifies evolution are elements in the genome that cannot evolve, that do not evolve. Okay? Because your theory is predicated upon the entire system evolving. Atheistic evolution is established. Its foundation is established on the entire system. All sequences and all proteins must be capable of evolving. If you start in a primordial soup, and this is where atheism actually starts its theory, it starts its theory in the primordial soup. Your theory stands expressly on the 100% evolution. All sequences have to be able to change. All proteins have to be able to change. If we find any elements in the genome, any elements that are frozen solid that can't evolve, this actually falsifies your theory. And it's no coincidence that virtually the entire genome cannot evolve. They're called the conserved elements. Every single species, if you want the information, I can give it to you, Ignostic One, has sequences and proteins that do not evolve. We know this for a fact. We have DNA. We have 250 million year old DNA that is identical to the DNA of the species that exist today. Okay, we have living fossils from Cambrian, actually before Cambrian. We have living fossils from 3.5 billion years ago, but which is a cyanobacteria. But we have myriads of living fossils from Cambrian, in which they are identical. Their phenotype is identical to the species that live today. This tells us that the protein coding sequences did not evolve. In over 500 million years, the protein coding sequences did not evolve if they look identical. Okay? This actually falsifies your theory, because your theory is falsified very simply by proving there are elements in the... Okay, time is up. Go ahead.
Part of the theory of evolution is there will be ultra-conserved elements, because it predicts, one of the predictions of common ancestry is that every living organism will share physical features and some DNA. The only way that prediction can be made is if there are ultra-conserved elements. And so IDScience doesn't even know what evolution predicts in the first place. He also doesn't know how to debate. He just has a script that he goes by. He's unable to follow an actual debate. He just says irrelevant stuff because he has a script, a really bad script at that he has to follow, and he can't address the speaker or that speaks on the mic. Yield the mic.
Yeah, thank you, Hal. So, and it's hard to understand. I mean, you don't see this IDScience, but what we see is that you posed a question, he responded, and then you sort of ignored it. You didn't connect it. You didn't make a transition. You didn't say, "Oh, well, this was how you said something will be falsified, and actually you're wrong because of this," or "Okay, you actually are right. These are ways that evolution could be falsified, and we can falsify them in the following ways." You didn't make a connection. You just sort of shotgunned with, "Oh, well, there's no way that a wing could evolve." We actually have studied the evolution of wings. There are papers on the evolution of wings. You seem to, and again, you keep on misspelling this. It's phenotypic plasticity. You've also said that we're genetically identical to our parents. We can have different hair colors and eye colors from our parents. There's so much difference. How could you think we're identical to our parents? You're not a clone of your father. That's obvious. You said we're 99% the same. We're basically the same. 99% is not 100%. That's why we have two different numbers, right? I mean, if it was just one number, it would just be 100%. It wouldn't be 99%. Now, we're 98% similar to chimpanzees. Do you think we're identical to chimpanzees? The same logic applies for 98, 99. There are differences. There are mutations that happen, and this is really basic biology. So it's even young Earth creationists don't. This is like rejecting the existence of bacteria. So there's no bacteria. It's really out there. So we have what are called, we have insertions, we have deletions, we have replications. We actually measure the rates of mutation in many species, and we can observe these rates of mutation. So for example, the Y chromosome for humans has been studied. One mutation every 30 million base pairs, which means you get something like 100 to 200 mutations a generation. And you can look that up for yourself. But yeah, you're denying a lot of basic science, and you weren't able to debate agnostic at all, really. If you thought you had a logical flow of thought, you didn't. So that's something you really want to work on. Agnostic, Mike is yours. Congrats on the win.
Man, I don't know if I want to take the congrats. I mean, it felt like I was beating up on a kid or something and taking his candy. It was, I mean, I kind of feel sorry for the guy that he would do that to himself almost. But you know, like, I don't know if anybody's heard of this. I recently learned about this. I'm taking a class called Fossils and the Evolution of Life. It's a fucking awesome class. I'm up into Cambrian fossils. I actually found my own fossils. I went out to the Robledo Mountains there, and I found a plecipod and some other fucking thing. I forget the name of it. I haven't actually studied yet, so it's not committed to memory. But I'm looking it up right now. Let's see here, going through my notes. It is there's plecipods. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I guess I didn't write that down. Oh yeah, brachiopod. I found a brachiopod and a plecipod. So I feel pretty cool about that. But you know, anyway, back to the topic. It's just, you know, I totally knew and could anticipate that this is what was going to happen with IDScience. He wanted to get me to a forum where he didn't have to talk because he doesn't have the knowledge. He's just got some papers or something on his computer that he wants to cut and paste, pre-scripted stuff, right? And when we tried to start which is really weird, really bad on his part, because I chose a topic and then he chose a topic and I gave in. I was like, all right, we'll go with your topic. And instantly went into like nonsense after I finished on microphone, you know. So it was just like, why would you do that to yourself? Why wouldn't you pick a topic that was specific to a paper that you could just copy pasta? That's what I would have done if I was in your shoes, you know, being a dishonest person, but I wouldn't be in your shoes because I'm an honest person. So it's just, it's pretty sad though. I mean, don't you guys think it's pretty sad that even happened, that we wasted our time taking this seriously, right? So, you know, this is why you don't debate these clowns on the text forums that he wants to go on to. That's why you debate him here, because you got to represent it. You can't just copy pasta voice, right? I mean, I guess you could play a recording. Maybe you should do that, IDScience. There you go. Maybe you guys should just take some really nice recordings of yourselves and play them. Free mic.
I understand why you don't like text debates, because you have to answer for the articles that I post, right? I don't have the time or the space to post the pertinent information that we're talking about. In a text debate, you have to. You're forced to, or you concede the debate. Okay, I can if you want to give, you know, if you pick your email, you know, pick your text. I will actually send you the information that you're looking for, but then I want you to respond to it. You don't want to respond to it, Ignostic One. You don't want to respond to these scientific articles for obvious reasons. Okay, what falsifies evolution are elements that can't evolve. The genome is littered with elements that do not evolve. Every single species have elements that do not evolve. The ribosomes, for example, do not evolve. The sequences that code for the cell wall do not evolve. The sequences that code for the flagellum do not evolve. I mean, you know, I can inundate you with sequences that do not evolve. Okay, we know this for a fact. They don't evolve. There are sequences that are identical in every single life form. Identical. This means they do not evolve. Okay, but your theory is actually predicated upon sequence evolution. So your theory is actually falsified. If I can actually give you evidence that there are sequences that cannot evolve, I have falsified your theory. Because you need to explain how these long functional sequences came to existence. As an evolutionist, you need to explain this. You have to explain, well, how does this happen? How do we get, you know, sequences that are, you know, thousands of base pairs, and they're identical across all species? How do we get these sequences in place? And how do we freeze them in place? What's the mechanism that can actually move them in place? What's the mechanism that can freeze them in place? You don't have an answer for this. No, science does not have an answer for this. Okay? And I can give you quotes from science that say they don't have an answer for this. Go ahead, Belazar.
You know, it really pisses me off when you guys come into this room and you won't debate with me about leprechauns, okay? Because leprechauns do not evolve. And it really makes me mad when science does not explain how leprechauns do not evolve. Leprechauns don't evolve. They don't evolve. And you know, I just don't have the time and I just don't have the space to put all the information that I know about leprechauns evolving and not evolving. But I'm telling you that I'm a smart person and this is the way it's going to be. This is backhanded preaching. All this guy is trying to do is convince somebody that he's got a brain. And you don't. Okay? And every time you open that great big hollow mouth of yours, it becomes glaringly apparent. Okay? What about the millions of that do evolve? Okay? If one dog is born with only 3 legs, does that mean we should assume all dogs are 3-legged? You dumbass? No, because the majority of dogs are 4-legged. And we're talking about the 4-legged dogs right now. If you can only keep up, that would be great. Now about those leprechauns.
You finished, I guess? You know, I'll grant that a text and a verbal debates are, by their nature, significantly different. But would anyone pretend to bring a verbal debate to a text forum? No? Then why would someone pretend to bring a text debate to a verbal forum? Or should I ask, why would anyone challenge another to a text debate in a verbal forum? Just have to understand what forum this is. Hal, you're next.
Produce a scientific paper that says that evolution predicts that there won't be ultra-conserved elements. I explained how it does make that prediction, and you didn't rebut it. So just provide a scientific source, IDScience, because I don't believe you. Yield the mic.
Yeah, I just want to know, IDScience, if you're going to be scientific, why are you using terms like atheistic evolution? That just makes you sound like a fundy. But this I found strange. You said, I can give you quotes from science that we don't have an answer for this. Do you think that's a valid argument against the theory of evolution? I mean, of course there are scientists who don't understand this or have some views and some mechanisms that they can't explain, but so what? I can give you quotes from science that we don't have an answer for this. And by the way, you're lying to everyone about these fossils, right? Whose DNA is identical That's just wrong. Can you post one of those papers? Because it doesn't say what you claim it does. Because we've read those papers before. Yeah, go ahead. Post it. Post it. Right? I want you to make the claim. Delta, I want you to record this. Get the link. Okay? But before you post the link, tell us exactly what it's going to say in the paper. Exactly. And I don't want you to backpedal once we read the paper. Right? So be very, very specific, because otherwise you don't understand the paper. So you need to be very clear on how these ancient bacteria and everything, these cyanobacteria, you're saying they are identical in every single way. Is that correct, IDScience? They are carbon copies. They are clones of bacteria that we find today. Is that right? Oh, well, somewhat similar isn't identical. Right, so now you're equivocating. They are clones from bacteria that are millions of years old. I want you to double down on this one, IDScience. I want you to be very clear. If you start just blathering, then we're going to know that you don't really know what those papers are saying. I want you to be very clear, and I know that you're not going to be. Right? So are they identical? Are they clones when they juxtapose them? Pass the mic.
Yes. See, revelation false. This is a no-brainer. If the horseshoe crab looks identical in Cambrian than it does today, this tells us that the protein coding sequences have not evolved. We know this. In order for there to be a change in the phenotype, there has to be a change in the protein coding sequences. Okay, hold on a second. I'm going to put the mic on lock. Hold on a second. Here's this may not be. I think the actual name of the paper is Halobacteria: The Evidence for Longevity. That's actually the name of the paper by Grant W.D. And I'm not. They believe the fossil is 250 million years old. I'm not saying I necessarily believe this, but science does. So that's the crux of the argument. So just go look it up. Go look up the paper. You know, I mean, the fact that we have living fossils in every single fossil layer. We have cyanobacteria from 3.5 billion years ago, and we have the same exact fossil living today. That alone tells you that the protein coding sequences have not evolved in 3.5 billion years. Okay, if the species is identical or virtually identical in appearance in its phenotype, we know that the protein coding sequences. We know this by default. We don't have to wonder. We know by default that the protein coding sequences have not evolved. They have not changed. This was the reason why Gould needed to invent punctuated equilibrium. Is because the huge gaps in the fossil record. You know, the fossil record did not show the evolution of phenotypes. It didn't show this, and so Gould had to invent this imaginary mechanism in which we had a rapid, change in evolution. A rapid change in and Gould actually admitted. I have the quote for you. Gould admitted that we don't have a mechanism for PE. PE has no mechanism to actually prove its validity. PE, punctuated equilibrium, is an excuse for why we have massive gaps in the fossil record. Go ahead, Hal. I'm done.
So IDScience is complaining that science adapts to the presence of new information. That's a bad thing. Also, he didn't provide a source that says that evolution makes the prediction that all parts of the DNA have to be evolvable, that it's inconsistent with evolution for certain elements in DNA to become conserved. I don't believe him that evolution makes a prediction that certain elements can't be conserved in the DNA. And I also don't think that it's inconsistent with the modern synthesis that you have living fossils or any of this. So he's just making stuff up about what the predictions of evolution are without providing any sources, because he doesn't have any, because he's just making it up, and then tries to provide evidence against his straw man of evolution. Yield the mic.
Yeah, IDScience, I was looking for the link, right? Telling me to Google it isn't going to help. Now, you're an expert. This is your forte, IDScience, so why couldn't you post the link or post the quote that supports your claim? I thought you said this is your forte. I mean, so why are you saying, in order to debate me, we got to go on a message board? What, so we can go reading through volumes and volumes and volumes of papers? This is your forte, so I expect nothing less than a link that substantiates your claim. That there are, and we were talking about cyanobacteria, you're the one that brought it up, right? Didn't you bring up cyanobacteria? Delta, are you still recording? Because I didn't bring up cyanobacteria. I don't think anybody else brought it up. Awesome. So, IDScience, you were on record here, pal. You brought up cyanobacteria. You said debating evolution is your forte. You've been doing this for 10 years. You have all these papers and everything. I expect nothing less than a link in text substantiating your claim that the cyanobacteria that we have today are identical, i.e. clones of those from 3.5 million years ago. I'll expect nothing less, and I'll accept nothing less. Right, especially given your boasts about this being your forte and having 10 years of experience. All right, pass the mic.
Yes, obviously, IDScience has to redefine what evolution is. That evolution would dictate that every part of the genome has to change in order for evolution to happen, because that's his harping on about. They said, well, there are some conserved part of the genome, so that could not be evolution, because if the evolution would be, there is conserved, but that would change. But of course, there is conserved one obviously are basic things which would make the animal not viable and wouldn't survive. So there is a reason for these things to be conserved, Anyway, that's so much for it. And then he says, well, the genome has to be the difference because the phenotype is, they look the same. You see, the ancient one look the same as now. That's no, the genome has to be the same. No, not at all. And I can show it to you. I'm not even a biologist, but from coding. See, because you say that DNA is basically a code. Yes, okay. Like a computer code. Well, hold on a second. I can write in different programs in different codes, where the code is not identical, but the result of the functioning of that program is exactly the same, up to the last bit. It looks exactly the same, it's functioning exactly the same, but the underlying code, the source code I give you, is completely different. So if that can be done in computer coding, because you say that the genome is a code, which is actually not really in that regard, but still, it can that doesn't show anything. So two different animals can have same I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to go in that one. But anyway, Mike is free.
Okay, well, Harry H. Craig Venter is on record saying that DNA is a code. It is a language. So if you think that's false, you actually need to have a debate with Craig Venter and tell him that he is false, because Craig Venter has said that DNA is in fact a language. It is a coded language. This is a no-brainer, okay? Harry H., in order for your argument to be valid, you have to actually show that identical species have different, species that are identical. They're of the same species. They're, descent with modification. They have different protein coding sequences. If you can't show that identical species have different protein coding sequences, you don't have an argument to be made. Okay? if and that's the point, is that the fact is that the protein coding sequences do not evolve. And that's been my argument for the last hour. There are sequences, and there are sequences that do evolve. This is a minority of the sequences, but the vast majority of sequences do not evolve. And I can, if you want the information, I can give it to you. I have, a hard drive filled with this information. They're called the ultra-conserved elements. And your theory actually needs to prove how these elements can evolve and how they can be frozen. You don't have a mechanism for this. You don't have a mechanism to freeze these elements in place. And Hal, to address you, show me one reference in which evolutionary science predicted conserved elements before they were found. Because you're saying this is something that evolution predicts. Okay, I've never seen one reference in which evolutionary science actually predicts that there's going to be ultra-conserved sequences before they were actually found. It doesn't exist, Hal, and you know it doesn't exist. Go ahead.
It doesn't matter. I'll concede and say it didn't predict it. Now, show me where evolution predicts the opposite, that there aren't going to be ultra-conserved elements, right? Because unless evolution made a prediction that's inconsistent with there being conserved elements, then there being conserved elements can't be evidence against evolution. Just provide your source, because I don't believe that evolution does make such a prediction. Yield the mic.
IDScience. Delta, are you still recording by any chance? So I want everyone to take a look at this over here. Awesome. So this is the link that he posted, and it's this guy called Michael Brown. And if you look towards the bottom of the page, right, it's Michael Brown. This is the other link that you're going to click onto the bottom of the page, www.creationscienceprophecy.com. So there's some quote mines from some papers on their IDScience, and then some questions that he raises. But I'm not seeing any arguments, so let me quote something down towards the bottom. He says, "I find this paper especially interesting." Right? And then he says, very interesting. It seems that there should be some change after all that time. How might it affect our understanding of how viable the theory itself is if we keep coming up with little or no change after as much as 250 million years, he asks. And then he says, presently the likelihood is very good that either we are looking at contaminants or these samples are not as old as being reported. He says it is postulated that different species change at different rates. The halobacteria example might be considered an example where the evolutionary rate is frozen. I do not know enough about biological clock rates to know if this is reasonable within evolutionary theory. Anyone out there know? This is the sort of stuff that you're debating with, IDScience. I mean, I asked you for a link. You said this is your forte. You've been doing this for 10 years. You linked me to this Michael Brown, who's a creationist, and he's on there asking questions, right, because he's ignorant on the topic. And it's just a page filled with, quote, wild speculations. So that's for the record. Pass the mic.
Yeah, okay, I understand. Okay, I take it that the DNA is a code. I accept whoever said it. On that basis, you cannot say that since the form of the animal, the phenotype of the animal is the same, that there therefore must be the same code. So on that basis, just on the single basis of how the animal look like now and then, you cannot confidently say that the genome has to be the same. If you take that DNA is a code, because there is no restriction there. As I said, in a computer code, I can write different code with giving the same result. Well, if the DNA is a code, that can be done. Now you haven't seen any of this. Well, you're arguing from ignorance, aren't you? It doesn't mean that you haven't seen any of those, which don't have the same code for the, proteins and all that. They just, you're just arguing from ignorance that's the case. Anyway, and again, and everybody pointing that out by now, and you should actually listen to people when they say that you're strawmanning evolution. You're redefining what evolution is. You put demand on it which you could basically knock down. You're demanding that the evolution means that every sequence in the genome has to be able to evolve. Otherwise, it's not evolution. And evolution doesn't hold that. Anyway, so that's it. So the real evolution, not what you call evolution. It doesn't hold that. So you're dismissed. You are strawmanning, that's it. You're knocking down your own strawman. Who cares about what you think, what evolution should be? Or anybody creationist? Who cares about it? I don't. Mike is free.
I'm going to quickly respond. I actually got out of line here. Harry H., we have two possibilities. Either these long conserved elements in all species existed forever, or they evolved into that place. Okay? If you're an atheist, you have to believe that the sequences evolved from a primordial soup. You don't have a choice. The only way you can believe that these sequences did not evolve is if you believe they were intelligently designed. That's the only way, because a designer would actually, just as a designer who created Microsoft Windows, they would create codes from the get-go. They would actually create long codes of information in which they had to be functional from that point. They didn't evolve the code. So you don't, Harry. If you to say that evolution doesn't need evolution of these sequences, you're false. Evolution is predicated upon this. Your entire theory starts from a primordial soup and RNA, and then you have to actually go from RNA to DNA, and then you have to go from short sequences to long sequences. Your entire theory is established upon sequence evolution. It amazes me that you don't understand this. You say that, well, we don't need sequences to evolve. Yes, in fact, you do. If you don't believe in an intelligent designer, you need all sequences in the DNA to evolve. And you have to have a mechanism to move them in place, and you need a mechanism to freeze them in place. Okay? If you don't have those mechanisms, you don't have a theory. Okay, go ahead, Hal.
So, where's the source IDScience that can illustrate that there being conserved elements tends towards falsification of evolution? Is it like being in Paltalk prevents you from providing sources, but if you're in a text debate, then you can provide sources? Like, how is that supposed to work? Oh, hey there, Ando, her. Yield the mic.
Yeah, again, you came up on mic and you just again redefined. You're just saying that what evolution should be, and not to mention that telling me as an atheist what I should believe and what I should start from. You see, I don't have to, being an atheist, I don't have to believe that we came from a primordial soup or anything like that. It has nothing to do with my atheism. You see. But evolution is no here for or there for me. Evolution could be true or not. I don't give a hoot about it. I just don't really care about it. Okay, as far as I can see it, yeah, it's true. You can say anything you want, and any other thing is done. That's my opinion. Okay, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right. Who cares? That's not going to tell me if that God exists or not. I'm not basing my belief in God on the basis of evolution. Okay, because that's goes nowhere near to that. Go nowhere near. I don't know why you're wasting your time on it either. Because showing evolution is wrong is not proving God exists. Because actually, first to prove God exists, you have to tell us what that God is. But of course, you can't do that. You don't want to even touch that, obviously, because yeah. But anyway, so much for that. But as I said, you just strawmanning everybody. That's all you do. And then you try to knock it down. You say, well, evolution has to be this, has to be that. You say so. Who cares what you said so? And you're asking for it that, yes, the mainstream scientist who's working on evolution would say, yeah, that evolution means that every part of the genome has to be able to evolve, otherwise evolution is false. Do you come up with anything? No. And you're supposed to be the expert on it, okay? In that subject. You should went through those hundreds of papers and you find those remarks in them. That's what you're sharing. Or you just put it out of your ass, is it? Mic is free.
Well, I think somebody ought to get some tinfoil and whip out some sort of little star so we can give IDScience his star in bullshitology. Okay, because that's pretty much all you've been spewing the entire time that you've been in here. It's one big bullshit statement after another. And yeah, I'm going with Harry on this one. The only thing that I need to be an atheist is your inability to prove your God claim. I can throw evolution out the window. I can throw the Big Bang out the window. I can throw science right out the window. And it doesn't support your God claim. Okay? You have to support your God claim, and you haven't done any of that. You're in here talking about science, and you know absolutely nothing about it. Dogma pretty much handed you your ass on a paper plate, and you were too ignorant to even know what was going on. Okay, he didn't even understand what he was talking about or what he was doing with you. He dismissed you because you're not worth debating. You're in here talking about unicorns and trying to equivocate unicorns with the theory of evolution. So basically what you're saying is never mind what all the scientists across the globe accept. You really know it was a magical wizard in the sky, and you're in here trying to sell that shit to me. Okay? But you can't because you can't support your God claim. So tearing down religion isn't going to stop the march of atheism. Or tearing down science, rather. It isn't going to stop because nobody is basing their atheist position on science. They're basing their atheism on the fact that you do things like this. You come in here, you spew a bunch of bullshit, you don't make any sense, you get everything wrong, and then you want to pretend like you know what an atheist is. You don't know what anything is. Seriously. You talk a lot, but you don't say anything. Right? I don't need science for the atheist position. Your mic.